Hey there, Games Apprentice back with another Evercade video. This week I'm going to be looking at the Gremlin Collection 1. Is it a load of rubbish, or is Actua very good? Let's find out. The Sheffield-based software house Gremlin Graphics got their start in the 1980s programming video games for the popular 8-bit home microcomputers of the period, with a variety of successful releases to their name. In 1994, they changed their name to Gremlin Interactive and decided to concentrate on the 16-bit home computer and console market, and it's during this time that they put out some of their most beloved titles. Gremlin's biggest strength was always how diverse its output was, and that can clearly be seen on this collection for your Evercade. Whether you're fighting the forces of non-imagination in Zool, taking on the football pitch in Actua Soccer, or overseeing the well-being of an entire space colony in Utopia, you know you're in for a good time with a Gremlin game. So there are 6 games on this collection, most of which you've probably heard of. Anyway, here they are ranked from worst to best. In last place on the collection is Actua Soccer. I'm pretty certain I played this one when I was younger, but early 3D football games tend to just blur into one. This is the PlayStation version that came out in 1996. I'm not sure why I had a positive expectation of this one. It's so rare to play a pre-2000 football game that holds up well. The graphics are obviously awful, but it shouldn't matter too much with a football game as long as you can see the ball and the players. The problem though is the camera angle. You can change it at the touch of a button, which is good, but when all the choices suck, it makes little difference. I found the best of a bad bunch to be the almost sensible soccer-like camera, although it was really only helpful when you were shooting up the pitch, not down. To make matters worse, whatever camera angle you pick, goal kicks refuse to adhere to your choice, making the camera slowly and annoyingly spin around before and after them. Now this would all be fine if the controls were good, but they absolutely suck too. Passing is mostly just luck, that A, it goes in the direction you press, and B, that you've even got a teammate off screen in that direction. Shooting is ridiculously hard too, and getting anything beyond a tap-in is seemingly impossible with the ball just going anywhere. Tackling is solid too. Slide tackles sometimes work, but more often than not, the person you slide tackling gets the ball back quicker than the tackler can even get up. And there's no jockey control like in modern football games, meaning it's so easy for the striker to just waltz straight past a defender. Lastly, not to be left out, changing the player that you control is also a nightmare, constantly changing to players nowhere near where you'd want to be. There's little positives to say about this game, except that this isn't the worst football game on the Evercade. See the Pico 2 collection for that one. Utopia is a city builder, a bit like SimCity, but set on another planet and less peaceful. This is a game that I'd never heard of before, but I love city builders, so I was keen to give it a go. Unfortunately though, it just didn't gel with me. It's not the most straightforward of games. The manual though is fairly thorough with the screens, just not really how you're supposed to get started. My main issue with the game is that it's got a really tiny grid to work with. It'd be like playing SimCity at the most zoomed in level with no way to pull it back. It's really hard to get a concept of what your base looks like with such a small chunk in view. It's also a rather ugly game with annoying music, and the controls are really irritating as well, clearly designed for a mouse and keyboard and poorly ported over to the Super Nintendo. There's a lot of waiting around for things to build, which isn't particularly fun when all you've got are the ugliness and annoying music to keep you entertained. If you're familiar with this game, then you might enjoy the nostalgia, although I'd imagine the slow pacing would even put off the biggest enthusiast. Brainbender is another one that I'd not heard of, but then I was never a massive Game Boy kid. The concept here is that you've got to guide a laser beam to the exit point purely by turning mirrors, blasting through any balls along the way. You have a set amount of time, and if at any point you aim the laser beam back at the laser, then the time begins to tick down very quickly. The problem with this one is that you have to do all this by slowly moving a cursor. There's really not many games where moving a cursor with a D-pad is fun. It's just really cumbersome and doesn't feel like it was designed for a console at all. It wouldn't be so bad if you didn't have a timer, but trying to play a really slow game fast is very frustrating. Not for me, this one. This one is 100% the reason I bought this cart and was excited for it. Now, I'd never played it before, but the first ever football management game I did play was the original Premier Manager on the Acorn Archimedes that also came out on the Amiga. So I was hoping this one would really fire up the old nostalgia furnace. Nostalgia furnace trademark, the Games Apprentice 2023. Unfortunately, the old nostalgia furnace was colder than a penguin's testicles on this one. It's probably not massively different from the original, but it was different enough for me to recognise very little beyond the player's star ratings. If you've never played a football management sim before, maybe this is a good one to start with. There's not really too much to do besides get a sponsor, set a formation and move your players around. The main problem with it for me was that firstly the match engine isn't great. It occasionally flashes up with an animation for a shot, but it's really hard to tell which team is actually shooting, so you can't start celebrating until you see the scoreboard change. The other thing is that it's really difficult to tell if you're actually doing anything. There's no metric to look at or anything. It's just if you win, you probably did good, and if you lose, you probably did bad, and that's really all you've got to go off. Personally, I don't know why anyone would play this over Football Manager Touch, unless for some reason they own an Evercade and not a phone. This one is an off-road racing game, and if you can't tell from the stunning visuals, it's another PlayStation 1 game. To say this isn't much to look at is a bit of an understatement, and if you really want to challenge your stomach, I highly recommend changing the camera so that you're inside the car. Still, gameplay wise, it's quite fun. The terrain's incredibly bumpy, so being bounced about all over the place trying to stay on track is a bit of a challenge. It's a bit like a modern, you can't see the air quotes but they're there, a modern super off-road. Unfortunately, the graphics make the presence a bit too well known throughout this one, because it's really difficult to tell the difference between the tracks and the walls, making not crashing into them particularly difficult until you've done a couple of laps. It's alright, but yeah, it's not great. So there's no Evercade Gem of the Week this week. Nothing deserves the much sought after accolade, but the best game on the cart is Zool. I always wanted to play this game as a kid. The box art was really enticing and it was supposedly like Sonic, which I absolutely loved. In Zool, you play a ninja that's pretty quick. It can climb, run, shoot, and do an attack that seems pretty pointless when it can already shoot. And for some reason, he seems to be obsessed with candy. I was surprised to see the Chub Chops branding was still in the game. You'd have thought after 30 years the sponsorship would have ended by now, but there it is in all its glory. Obviously they had some good lawyers work up that one. Zool's a pretty fun platformer, and it is indeed a lot like Sonic. The main difference really is that you have to collect things to finish the level. They're not optional. This does take away from some of its speed, as otherwise you get to the end of the level and you end up backtracking. I was pretty disappointed to see that Zool only got 2 pages in the manual, considering Premier Manager got 8 and Zool is so front and centre on the box. I know there's not much to the game, but I thought maybe I'd get some fun facts about Zool, like what his favourite detergent is or what season he likes the best. Personally, autumn. It's definitely no Sonic, but Zool is cool. For more poetry, check out my Christmas special. The main problem with this collection is that nothing other than Zool really holds up, and Zool's not even that good a game. So you've got 5 other games that you're just not going to want to play, and they just haven't stood the test of time. It's nice to see so many PlayStation 1 games on this collection, but it's kind of a double-edged sword because PlayStation 1 games are pretty crap now. The graphics just don't hold up, they're always a bit blurry, they tended to do too much with 3D, so it just ruins the gameplay, and they're just not that much fun generally. The good ones are, but the good ones don't generally get past PlayStation, so they're never going to be on the Evercade. Personally, I think whether you want this collection or not is going to come down to Premier Manager 97. If you're a football fan and a football management fan, then maybe you'll be on the fence a bit with this one. If you're not, you shouldn't even be near the fence. If you are into football management games, then you've got to ask yourself, do you want to play one that's that dated and is a console port, it's not even a PC port? For all those reasons, I'm going to score this collection a measly 4 out of 10. Sorry. As always, don't forget to like the video, it helps me get more views, it helps my channel grow. Please click subscribe if you want to see more content, and I'll catch you next time.